Women of the 1840s, Pioneer Women and Women Rights Movement. In 5th and 4th grade, we learned about the Oregon Trail. However, most of what we learned was about how men led their lives. What about women's lives? Around this time, the women's rights movement was growing. What is the women's rights movement? How is this connected to pioneer women? How does this affect our lives today? You will learn about this in Women of the 1840s. Between 1840 and 1869, about 350,000 people traveled west in covered wagons on what was known as the Oregon Trail. The trip covered about 2,000 miles and lasted 4 to 6 months. The death toll on the trail was high. Diseases and accidents were extremely common. People drowned in rivers, and children that fell from wagons sometimes got crushed under its wheels. Although rare, the prospect of Indian attacks added to the sense of danger. While traveling, women were expected to do the same work they did back home. They cooked, washed clothes, and took care of children. Each woman had a story to tell at the end of the journey. These hardships highlighted women's strengths and abilities that even they did not know they possessed. The stories of these exceptional women led others to question, how did pioneer women influence the women's rights movement?
But before we explore this connection with pioneer women, let us first explain what the women's rights movement is. It was a movement that convinced society and led the government to allow women the same rights as men. It was inspired by the civil rights movement, with the realization of how unfair racism was. If colored people could fight for the rights of voting, why not women? Thus, the women's rights movement was founded. It was led by two very strong-willed and unique women named Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They hosted what later became known as the Seneca Falls Convention on July 19, 1848. Almost 300 people, including 40 men, were in attendance. Elizabeth Cady Stanton read the Declaration of Independence to the gathering, stating, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all man and woman are created equal." As the Declaration of Independence listed King George's acts over tyranny over the colonists, the Declaration of Independence listed men's act over tyranny over women. After the convention, the women's rights movement soon spread throughout the country.
This is where we return to the story of pioneer women. These role models of an earlier generation provided society an image of courageous, strong-willed, and unique women struggling shoulder to shoulder with men to build the nation. As support for the movement grew throughout the country, reformers made progress towards eventually winning for women the same freedom and rights as men. These brave and idealistic women of yesteryear that struggled to build this country deserve our continued admiration and respect. That's something that we can all be proud of.